So discussing about molecules and interaction, this is the CSIR examinations unit 1. Molecules is a building blocks in living cells. Is the main types carbohydrate, so energy is other structures, and proteins, enzymes, structure and functions, lipids, membranes and energy storage, nucleic acids, DNA, RNA and carry the genetic info. Water, most important molecule for life. Interaction, how these molecules hold together and work with each other. Hydrogen bonds in DNA, proteins and water. Ionic bonds between charged atoms. Van der Waals forces, weak but important in proteins. Hydrophobic interactions, how proteins folded. Covalent bonds, strong bonds within molecules. So in this next slides, so the status of matter and basic chemistry. Four status of matter: solid, for example, diamond, and molecules are tightly packed fixed shape. Liquid, for example, juice. Molecules are close but can move to take place of container. For example, juice. And gas, for example, clouds. The molecules are far apart to the spread out. And plasma, example, neon, sinks ionized neon gas. So ionized gas with the charged particles. So matter, it is composed of elements. Elements is a small molecules. For example, atoms like hydrogen, oxygens, Na, Ca. In this, the small molecules were elements, substances that cannot be separated further. So all changes need energy and temperatures. So solid, melting, freezing, and liquid evaporations, and gas ionization, and plasma, and this also the component of the four status matters. Next slides on hydrogen bonding gives water its unusual properties. So water says liquid at room temperature, otherwise it would be gas like other similar molecules. So ice forms a crystalline solid with an order arranged at cold temperatures. Three unusual properties of water. First one, high boiling point, and second, ice floaters, and third one, cohesion and adhesions. So each one, because of hydrogen bonding, water is liquid and ice is solid. So next slides, polar biomolecules dissolve readily in water because they can replace water to water interactions with more energetically favorable water to soluble interactions. So what does it mean by simple words? Polar biomolecules. Molecules with and charges, for example, sugars, amino acids, DNA, proteins also. Water is also polar, already told you. So it attract other polar molecules. So why they dissolve water molecules would rather bond with polar bimolecules than only with other water molecules. This new water solid bonds gives off more energy, so it happens easily. So like dissolved polar dissolve in polar, and non-polar dissolve in non-polars. So important points, for example, polar dissolve in water, for example, glucose, salt, protein. Non-polar does not dissolve in water, example, oil, fat, lipid. So next one, discussing about opposite concept. So opposite concept for the contrast non-polar biomolecules. Non-polar biomolecules are poorly soluble in water because they interfere with water to water interactions. So what it means in simple words, non-polar biomolecules already told you, for example, fat, oil, lipid and waxes. And next slides on, and water has a higher melting point. So higher melting point, the bond angle 104.5 degrees. This is the high perfect tetrahedron angles. And next slightly less than 109.5 degrees, a perfect tetrahedron because of crowding by non-bonding orbitals. So for example, oxygen pulls shared electrons towards itself. So oxygen becomes slightly negative. So orbital and becomes slightly is a positives. So water's melting and boiling bonds are higher than other solvents because of hydrogen bonding. Oxygen is more electronegativity than hydrogens. Next slides on. So partial charges in water. So partial charges in hydrogen bonding topic. So each hydrogen atom pairs a partial positive charges and oxygen atoms pairs a partially negative charges equal in magnitude. So the sum of two partial positives. So covalent bond is inside one water molecule strong roughly 460 kJ per mole. Hydrogen bonds roughly 20 kJ per mole. Next slides on. In this diagram for explanation in water molecule and hydrogen bonding, the single water molecules and V-shaped. So band angle 104.5 degree. The charges inside one H2O molecule and hydrogen bonds in between into H2O molecules. So next slides are discussing about hydrogen bonds are relatively weak. So in these slides, hydrogen bonds are relatively weak. The bond type, hydrogen bond in water, energy is roughly 23 kJ per mole and comparison is a weakest. And covalent bond, see 348 kJ per mole, roughly for 50x strongest than hydrogen bonds. So hydrogen bond break and random easily. That's why water is liquid and can flow. Now next slides, nature of the interactions and interaction energy kJ per mole. So first dipole, induced dipole is a weakest and van der Waals very weak and dipole weak and hydrogen bond is a moderate. Covalent bond is a strong, ionic bond is a strongest. So, and summary of the weakest force between molecule is van der Waals. The strongest is ionic bond. Hydrogen bond is in the middle. So, van der Waals and dipole induced dipole to dipole hydrogen bond and covalent bond is ionic. So, next slides the interactions energy between atom A and B and roughly the question answer 400 kJ per mole. The type of interactions between them is, the answer is B is a correct answer, is a covalent is a correct answer. So covalent bond ranges 60 to 600 kJ per mole. So answer is a correct is a B is a covalent. So next slides discussing about bond type and dissociation energy. Bond type and dissociation energy. So this is the intra and intermolecules. The ionic and covalent are inside molecules and hydrogen bonds dipole and London are between molecules and water hydrogen bonds and London dispersions. The ionic and covalent bonds are strong hydrogen dipole to London bonds are weak forces between molecules. And next questions for match the following bonds with their approximate energies. Say hydrogen bonds, B is a hydrogen bond, van der Waals forces Q and R is a covalent bond and S is ionic bonds. So these also the listen carefully. The answer is hydrogen bonds roughly 3 kilocalories, 12.5 kg per mole and van der Waals is a 0.5 kilocalories, roughly 2 kg per mole and covalent bond 80 kilocalories, roughly 335 kg per mole. So ionic bonds. The answer is D is a correct answers. And next discussing non-polar gas are poorly soluble in water. In these slides for so non-polar gases dissolve in poorly N2O2 CO2 is a they cannot form hydrogen bonds with water. So water prepare bonding with itself. Polar gases dissolve extremely well. And next slides and question answer. So solubility of gases in water depends on their interactions with the water molecules. Order of solubility CO2, O2, SO2, NH3. So the answer is correct answer for, and ammonia dissolves the most because it forms oxygen is non-polar, so it dissolves it at least low. Next slides diagram is about osmosis and cell behavior in different solutions. Three gases for cell in solution: isotonic and hypotonic and hypertonic. Isotonic for solid concentrates inside and outside. Hypertonic solution, solid concentration outside to inside. Hypotonic, solid concentration outside to inside. So for example, plant cells in pure water becomes turgid. Thank you. So please be subscribe our channel. Thank you.